In the year 2000, Associate Professor Yaku worked with deep focus in his research room at a public university. His assistant entered and called out to him softly, but Yaku gave no response. He did not react until she came close and called him again, at which point Yaku suddenly started and looked at his assistant. The assistant smiled and introduced Yaku to the man from the pharmaceutical company who had come for a collaboration. Yaku told his assistant to guide the man first and said he would speak to him personally after a short while. Then the assistant took the company representative away and began describing Yaku's capabilities as they walked. She explained how everyone recognized his talent, how his research projects had world-class impact, and how many patients were cured by his discoveries. Meanwhile, Yaku was still working diligently when his alarm suddenly rang. He realized the time and saw that it was already midnight, so Yaku looked at a photograph kept on his desk. He proceeded to eat a light meal, and the picture was of him and his younger sister who battled a serious illness. His sister had an inoperable tumor that eventually took the little girl's life. No doctor could help her, and everyone gave up on treatment. But Yaku could not accept this. After eating the light meal, Yaku went to the pharmaceutical synthesis lab, as the medicine would be ready in about an hour, giving him time to rest. He set his alarm and went to sleep, for Yaku had not spoken to patients for a long time. His only small hope was that one day he would become a doctor in a small village. But when his assistant returned to find him the next morning, she found Yaku lying unconscious on the bed with both arms hanging down, and Yaku slowly woke up. He saw a pink-haired girl standing in front of him looking very worried, so Yaku looked at her but understood nothing. He got off the bed, opened the window, and looked out in amazement at a vast garden before him. The pink-haired girl handed Yaku a mirror, returning his face and lost memories, and Yaku realized he had died from overwork. Seeing that his memory had vanished, the girl introduced herself as Latte, his personal maid. Yaku felt itchy at that moment and wanted Latte to help untie his straps, so Latte immediately accepted the order. She ran off to make preparations. But as Yaku rolled up his sleeves, he remembered something from before he slept. The note he wrote stayed with him into this life, and when Latte began bathing him, she saw a strange mark on Yaku's arm. To her, this was the sign of the pharmaceutical saint. But for a modern person like Yaku, it was just a mark. It looked like a leftover burn from electricity. So Latte knelt down and began to pray. She thanked the pharmaceutical deity for keeping the young master safe after yesterday's accident, and Yaku heard the term but did not understand. He needed to confirm this with Latte, so Latte explained that Yaku was the young master of the family. He was a great noble and royal pharmacist of the St. Fluve Empire, and the emperor had given Yaku's father the title of Grand Noble. This title was reserved for those with extraordinary skills and was considered superior even to a duke, and Yaku's grandfather was the dean of the institute. Latte took Yaku to the paintings in the house and introduced everyone, starting with the painting of his father. The largest painting in the center was of his father, Grand Noble Bruno, and to the right was Lady Beatrice. His sister Blanche was there, and to the left was his elder brother Paul, who was currently studying at the world's top university. He studied at Novaluid Pharmaceutical University, and for this reason, the old Bruno had high hopes for both brothers. One had academic excellence, and the other had the divine blessing, which appeared as the pharmaceutical deity's mark on Yaku's arm. Yaku still did not understand this divine blessing, and he wondered internally if using divine magic was truly so shocking. Latte got scared seeing his blank expression, as she worried that he might have forgotten this as well. Using divine magic was proof of nobility, and Yaku was an expert in it, so this was a huge issue. If Yaku could no longer perform divine magic, he could be thrown out of the house, so he became nervous and went back to his room. Latte explained that Yaku could use water-based divine magic, so first he had to think about the form of water. Yaku guessed it could be the molecular structure of water, and immediately recalled knowledge from his past life. The structure of water emerged in his mind, and a strange glowing mark shone on his arm. Water materialized in Yaku's palm, leaving him shocked, for he had created it. However, he did not know how to control it, so Yaku had to run straight to the window and release the water he had just made. Latte stood below and saw what happened, feeling very happy that Yaku had finally recalled divine magic. Yaku returned to his room and began analyzing this divine magic, as he only thought about the structure of water. He just had to keep thinking about how it appeared, and this made him curious if he could create other things too. So Yaku immediately tried, and he actually succeeded, for now he could create not only water, but also gold, sodium, sulfur, and sugar. He could create pure substances, but not compounds. And Yaku had now become proficient in his capability. His left hand could generate substances, while his right hand could remove them. But then there was a knock on the door, so Yaku quickly hid all the things he had made, and Latte ran in with excitement to congratulate him. But then she remembered something. What would happen if Yaku had forgotten his pharmaceutical knowledge? So she asked Yaku to study because because Lord Bruno often asked medicine-related questions during mealtimes, so Yaku and Latte went to the library to review his knowledge, where the bookshelves were literally full of books, and Yaku just had to look to recall everything immediately. And seeing this, he was also surprised. The boy named Falma had already memorized all the books there. And that evening, Yaku was walking in the dining room. As soon as his mother and sister saw him, they immediately asked about him. And sitting at the table, Yaku realized that this was truly a caring and supportive family. And from now on, he would live as their son, just as Latte had told him for Grand. Chancellor Bruno asked Yaku a medicine-related question, and Yaku answered easily. And seeing that his cognitive abilities were now fine, he decided that Yaku would return to school with Miss Ellen the next day. So the next morning, with Miss Ellen, the class began, and as soon as she met Yaku, Ellen felt that something was off, for his calm and collected nature was not like young Master Falma at all. Yaku quickly made an excuse that he had been struck by lightning, which was why his memory was a bit unstable. This reduced Ellen's suspicion, and as the class started, Miss Ellen decided to teach Yaku divine magic instead of medicine knowledge. Divine magic was something that all nobles could use, and they all had their own guardian deities. Yaku's family had the medicine deity as their guardian, while Miss Ellen had the water deity, and divine magic consisted of 5 basic elements. There were also 2 special attributes called yin and yang, but at this point, Yaku raised a question because he understood water and fire attributes. However, he could not remember what the void attribute was, and Ellen's knowledge was also limited because regarding the void attribute, there had been no documentation for over 300 years. But Yaku had another question about whether someone could create substances. He asked what that would be like, but Ellen confirmed that no such attribute existed because creating substances was an ability that only gods or demons possessed. So after the theory session ended, Miss Ellen encouraged Yaku to start the practical lesson. Seeing that Yaku had not brought his staff, she scolded him and had to lend him her own staff temporarily. Unsurprisingly, her instruction was that Yaku should release a water projectile from the other side, and upon seeing that Yaku had forgotten the technique, Ellen had to demonstrate it herself, so she used her power to shoot a stream of water into the sky. Yaku was amazed watching this, but for Ellen this technique was very basic, and Yaku had done it effortlessly in the past. Yaku grabbed the staff and started practicing, but as soon as he thought about the structure of water, an extremely fast water stream shot out, leaving Ellen stunned as she ran anxiously towards Yaku, wondering how he could perform magic without any mantra. More importantly, this water stream was very powerful, and Ellen worried that Yaku had released his entire lifetime's worth of divine power in a single burst, so she needed to take the staff to control it. But when Yaku held it, it began to glow, which scared Ellen once again and left her completely flabbergasted, for this divine power was far beyond the capability of ordinary evaluators, and no divine mage had ever performed like this before. So Ellen anxiously reminded Yaku that from now on, he should not target the evaluators in front of others, not even his father. The class ended there, but due to the earlier shock, Ellen's glasses had fallen off, and she could not see the way home without them. Yaku had to hold her hand to lead her forward, and they sat on a stone bench to rest, where Yaku showed Ellen a trick to see the path without glasses by making a small hole with her hand and using it like a lens. But as soon as Yaku was demonstrating this ability, he accidentally noticed that a finger on Ellen's right hand was glowing blue. He rushed over and found out that this injury had occurred just that morning, and since Yaku did not fully understand this ability yet, he asked Ellen about it. Ellen started sweating and became tensed, stepping back to evaluate the other injuries, for this was actually the divine sight. So she wondered what Yaku truly was, and deep terror was clearly visible on Ellen's face, because he did not even have a shadow. Yaku wanted to help her up, but Ellen was now so scared that she could not stay there and immediately ran away. The next day, Yaku was summoned to his father's room and told about the incident with teacher Ellen, who had feigned a high fever and asked for a long leave. Yaku immediately remembered what had happened yesterday and realized she must be scared of him. While Marquise Bruno took a deep breath, he decided to let Ellen go, for nurturing students was part of a doctor's training, but Ellen could not manage it fully. Then he gave Yaku a letter and a bottle of medicine and asked him to deliver it to Ellen, so Yaku accepted this task. He took the medicine bottle and went back to his room to check it, for according to the Marquise, this was only stamina-enhancing medicine, but if Ellen had a fever, she might need different medicine. So Yaku immediately prepared another one before going to Ellen's house. He prepared another bottle, and while he waited in the living room, the door opened slightly, and Ellen met Yaku wearing full armor. She did this because she was afraid that perhaps Yaku had come to silence her. So Yaku quickly explained that he had just come to give his father's medicine, and hearing this, Ellen got more scared as she felt that the medicine delivery might actually be a poison delivery. However, it was nothing like that, and Yaku presented 2 types of medicine. One was from his father, and the other was for fever, which he prepared himself. And he did this so that Ellen could continue to teach him. Ellen could not understand Yaku's intent, for if Yaku was the reincarnation of the medicine deity, then why did he need her education? But Yaku did not feel that way at all, as he considered himself just an ordinary human. And hearing this, Ellen understood the situation, and if this was what Yaku wanted, then she would still stay with him. But of course, she would hide all of Yaku's secrets. So Yaku smiled and moved to touch Ellen's hand and said that he needed her knowledge, for divine magic was a power that was expressed through the mouth. There was no book in his house teaching divine magic, as there were only medicinal books. So to control his powers, he still needed Ellen's guidance. So Yaku put his hand in his bag and took out a bouquet of flowers, which he gave to Ellen to give thanks, and then he left her to rest a bit. And as soon as she held the bouquet, Ellen's face blushed because Yaku had given medicine in a powder form that Ellen had never seen before, so she was a bit nervous. But as soon as she thought about it, she understood that the pharmaceutical deity was a protective deity, and Yaku would never harm her. Plus the bouquet that Yaku gave was of sky blue flowers, which was Ellen's favorite color. And thinking this, Ellen kept no more suspicion on Yaku, so she took the medicine, and the next day Ellen came to meet Yaku so she could continue her teaching job. But this time she wore full armor. However, this was not out of fear of Yaku, but for her own protection, because Yaku's power was too much and it was difficult to control. And another reason for Ellen continuing work was that she could not just leave Yaku like this. For if Yaku could not keep control on his divine magic, then perhaps the whole city would be in danger. So Ellen smiled and said thanks to Yaku. She confirmed that the medicine he gave was very effective. So Ellen prepared a full curriculum for Yaku and took him to a deserted island to ensure full safety. And the lessons were going smoothly, although Yaku still could not get complete control over his powers. But Ellen was very happy this time, and until he could master his powers, she would happily keep teaching him. And in the following days, when there was no class with Ellen, Yaku practiced with his medicinal eye in the mansion. He could diagnose just by looking where people were injured, and from there, he started finding out their illness. Almost everyone in the mansion was injured, especially Uncle Cedric, who had a spine-related issue in his legs that needed long-term treatment. Through practice, Yaku got a better understanding of his abilities, and he learned that if a disease was fully cured, then the emitted light would disappear. But if the disease partially remained, then a dim light was left. So Yaku recorded all these observations carefully in his notebook, and thinking this, Yaku took a deep breath, because in this world, his existence was considered superstition. If this extraordinary ability was revealed along with the fact that he had no shadow, then his death sentence was certain. To prevent this, it was necessary for him to blend in with all family members, starting with Latte. And Yaku found out that Latte had eczema, so he immediately ran to his room to make medicine, and according to the standards of a high-ranking family, all necessary tools were already available, so preparation took little time, and Yaku immediately took it to Lot. The girl became very emotional and her eyes filled up, and she asked Yaku to give some to the other house servants too. So Yaku and Lot started distributing medicines, and every recipient was very happy because ordinary servants could not take medicine from their masters. Yaku's family was high-ranking, and old Bruno only treated other nobles. So household servants did not get special privileges, for this was a feudal society, and these rules had been established for years, and Yaku understood this somewhat. But for him, social hierarchy was not right at all, and Latte found this completely correct, because even if the old man broke the rule by examining servants, they still would not have the money to afford medicine. Then Yaku and Latte walked on, and he had to think a lot on this issue, because at that time, medicine prices were not reasonable at all, and from his observation, no medicine was truly effective, but if medicine could reach the right people, then it would be very good. So in this way, Yaku's goal was established, and he decided that from now on, he would give medicines only to those who truly needed them. And hearing this, Latte became very emotional because she had recently seen a big change in Yaku. For now, he did not discriminate against servants, so he would definitely become a great pharmacist. But the next morning, when Yaku came for breakfast, his sister Blanche was nowhere to be seen, and his parents' faces were very serious. And then Yaku found out that Blanche had caught chickenpox, which was a viral infection. The infection risk was higher in children, but once recovered, the chances of a reinfection were very low. On Earth, this disease was not very dangerous, but seeing Mr. Bruno's face, Yaku understood that here it could be severe. Mr. Bruno decided that for 3 weeks, no one would contact Blanche, and only some household servants would care for her. Yaku felt a bit uneasy because Blanche was still just a child, and leaving her alone did not feel right. But for Mr. Bruno, it was completely normal, because 4 years ago, he had done the same with Yaku, and after reminding him, he had work, so he left immediately. So Yaku returned to his room and started making a treatment plan for chickenpox, for with his substance creating ability Maybe he could easily gather medicinal ingredients. And then he got a chance when the servants were not paying attention, and he entered Blanche's room where he diagnosed with his medicinal eye and confirmed that it was truly chickenpox. So immediately, Yaku gave her the required medicine, but Blanche immediately covered herself with a blanket because she did not want to drink the medicine at all and complained that it was very bitter. So Yaku immediately thought of a solution and mixed the medicine into a sweet pastry so that Blanche could easily eat it. And after eating, Blanche curiously started asking Yaku, for father had said that there was no cure for this disease. Yaku jumped quickly and had to make up an excuse to trick Blanche. And after giving the medicine, Yaku also started playing with her, which made Blanche very happy. And the little girl saw that Yaku had changed because he had never shown such care before. So Blanche smiled and said that she loved Yaku very much. And hearing this, Yaku remembered his sister from his old world. She was just like her. And due to Yaku's care, Blanche's recovery was very fast. So Grand Noble Bruno was also surprised by this. But when he asked for the reason Blanche obeyed Yaku and returning to his room, Yaku again started thinking about his abilities, specifically substance creation and the ability to detect others' diseases. For this was work that ordinary people could not do, and this made Yaku a bit anxious about whether he could use this power without any consequence. Yaku had also prepared his new lens, so now he did not need to do calculations while diagnosing diseases. Then the butler came to call Yaku and told him that the old master had summoned him for an urgent task, so Yaku immediately ran to his father's room where he was instructed to pack his things, for he was to go to the royal palace behind him to check the emperor's disease. While explaining to Yaku, he coughed repeatedly, and Yaku immediately understood that this was no ordinary cough. Yaku was about to diagnose his father, but he was reminded not to do so, lest it be discovered, so he stopped. He could not tell Yaku about the emperor's illness beforehand, after which they went to the palace, where countless servants were present in the emperor's chamber. Seeing Grand Noble Bruno arrive, they ran to welcome him and informed him that the emperor's condition was not good at all, and Bruno already knew that her lungs were very weak. So after bowing, the curtains were opened, and Yaku was shocked to learn that the emperor was a female, and Elizabeth lay weak on the bed. She could not even move a hand, after which the Grand Noble told Yaku to handle her case. So Yaku took out a knife and made a small cut on the empress's finger. Then he put it in a test tube, which immediately started glowing, and Yaku just kept watching, unable to understand if disease detection happened this way. And when the curtains of the emperor's bed were closed again, the astrologers went, who shook their heads to say that the emperor's fate was very bad, and perhaps not many days were left. So Bruno could only make a face and accept the truth, although he felt that if they took proper care of the empress, there might be a little hope. He called Yaku behind him, for his job was to stand by and help while his father prepared the medicine. At this time, countless thoughts about the world's pharmacists were swirling in Yaku's mind, for they had the freedom to prescribe medicine themselves, so they could do treatment and medicine preparation at the same time. And standing there, Yaku immediately recognized that the Grand Noble was using some kind of opium, and perhaps he was preparing an anesthetic medicine. After preparation, he reached the Empress's bed, where she looked weakly at Bruno, and asked him to tell the truth about whether her help was possible. So, to assure the Empress, Bruno showed the medicine vial he had just prepared, and said that it was very effective, and it would help her in breathing. But Yaku stood watching, and could not accept this, for this medicine was only temporarily reducing her pain, and had no permanent effect. And at this time, the people close to the Emperor had accepted the truth, and were whispering among themselves that the order to call the priest should be given, as the Emperor would perhaps only survive until tomorrow evening. Yaku raised his eyebrows, for he could not accept this, as even though so many people stood in the room, no one could cure her. Calling the priest and giving painkillers was nothing different from helping her towards a painless death. So, unable to watch anymore, Yaku activated his medical eye and started diagnosing the Empress. She had multiple illnesses, for her lungs were very weak, and she had cancer, bronchial dilation, and pneumonia too. Yaku looked more closely and saw that this was no ordinary pneumonia, but pulmonary tuberculosis, which was known as the White Death. At that time, there were no CT scans, so the Empress's treatment was only possible through medicine, and 4 treatment plans immediately came to Yaku's mind. Rifampicin proved to be the most effective, but this medicine was not easy to make because the molecular weight was very high. The structure was also complex, and Yaku became a bit anxious thinking about what would happen if he failed. However, when the Empress's children came into the room crying, a doctor-like determination returned to Yaku. He had to face his patient and the disease to save the Empress's life. So Yaku took a deep breath. He went to the Empress's bedside with full determination, bowed to her, and expressed his desire to treat her. Bruno was shocked as he felt his son was acting in haste and should be stopped, but the Empress stopped him. There was so much power in Yaku's confidence that he gave assurance of accepting the treatment, and seeing the determination in Yaku's eyes. The Empress also stopped the officials present in the room, for when she was healthy, she was the country's most powerful divine magic user. Therefore, she could decide whom to trust, and she could see in Yaku's eyes that he was the only person who had not given up. So, she decided to entrust her life completely to Yaku, and Yaku accepted this mission and immediately locked himself in his room. He ignored his father knocking outside and remained focused on his work, for his goal was to eliminate the tuberculosis virus through medicine. He had to mix 3 or 4 different medicines, so Yaku visualized the molecular structure of every medicine in his mind. He wrote them in notes and started using his power to create the medicines. But then Bruno broke the door and entered. He angrily said that no pharmacist in this world could cure the White Death, and using random knowledge would not be considered pharmacist work, especially since it was a new treatment. Bruno was very angry and told Yaku to stop immediately, but Yaku did not listen to him. Yaku assured his father that he had the remedy for the Empress's cure, and he was doing this to save his father as well. He ignored his father's words and continued making the mixture. But then Bruno opened his notebook. Yaku turned around immediately and created an ice wall between them, which shocked Bruno, and he was in disbelief to learn this. Yaku could perform divine magic without any divine staff or chant, so he broke into a cold sweat and pointed his divine staff at Yaku. He asked who he was, but when he saw the glowing mark on Yaku's hand, he realized that it was the Holy Seal. Bruno held his head and lamented that he could not believe his son had received the blessing of the god of medicine. At this, Bruno pulled back his staff and reminded Yaku again that the Empress had risked her life on his medicine. Therefore, he would also have to stake his life on this new treatment, as this was the responsibility and honor of a pharmacist. Yaku understood and removed the ice wall. Then he focused completely on his work. Seeing his son making medicine with such concentration reminded Bruno of his childhood, and he unintentionally asked Yaku if he was truly his son. After a short while, Yaku prepared his masterpiece, and Minister Claude became very worried and asked Bruno if he would stop his son. Bruno's intention was exactly that, but now he could only observe because Yaku's technique was far superior to his own. Yaku took the medicine to the Empress's bedside and began his explanation. First, showing the Empress her phlegm sample, he asked her to look carefully in the candlelight, and although the Empress could not fully understand, she cooperated. She was immediately astonished because when viewed in the light, she saw microbes moving inside, so she called Minister Claude. She showed him as well, and Claude was stunned and showed it to others too, upon which Yaku explained about the phlegm. The crawling things were called bacteria, and this was the cause of the Empress's White Death disease. It was a continuously progressing disease, so Yaku wanted the Empress to take regular treatment. If she remained committed to his method of taking medicine for 6 months, then her disease would be fully cured. The Empress heard this and became nervous and drenched in sweat because Yaku's explanation had changed the entire concept of the disease. She trusted Yaku and decided to take his medicine, so Yaku poured the medicine into 2 cups. He drank 1 cup before everyone else before the Empress's turn came. Then he went to the other ministers. He loudly announced that when the Empress's condition improved, the people of the Empire would no longer fear the incurable White Death. After completing the Empress's treatment, Yaku and his father returned home in a horse carriage that same night. As Yaku sat nervously in the carriage, Bruno remembered his son's childhood when he himself had given him the knowledge of a pharmacist. For becoming a pharmacist required not just knowledge, but also a compassionate heart for patients, and this was Bruno's principle. However, until the electricity strike hit Yaku, he did not realize how much he worried about patients and how he could do nothing for his son. But now, Bruno was convinced that the boy standing in front of him was truly not his son. Reaching the mansion gates, Yaku finally called his father, and he took out his case file in the hope that his father would also use it, and Bruno immediately accepted because his son had received the blessing of the medicine god. So if this was the deity's will, then he would accept it. But Yaku heard this and immediately refused, saying that he was just an ordinary apprentice pharmacist. And despite this power, it was Bruno who had taught him how to face a dying patient and give them comfort, for Bruno had guided him. So Yaku extended his hand in front of Bruno and made a promise that from now on he would walk the medical path with him and help the needy around the world. And it had been 3 months since Yaku took responsibility for the Empress's checkup. Now, they began exchanging medical knowledge, and meanwhile, Bruno told Yaku that people from Nova Medical University were asking him for the White Death treatment formula, and because this was Yaku's achievement, he gave them a proper explanation. This was divine power, so even if they found out, they could not enhance it. But hearing this, Yaku immediately refused. He said that the medicine was made without any divine magic, and one day he would share it with the whole world. But Bruno had. Another matter to discuss to remind Yaku about the White Death. For this time, he suspected that someone had brought the disease to the palace to target the Empress. Yaku did not think so, because this was a contagious disease, and bringing it to the palace to directly attack the Empress was very difficult. And now the time for the Empress's checkup arrived, so Yaku stood up and asked for permission to go first. Bruno remained seated reading Yaku's formula sheet and became nervous thinking about how long it would take him to reach this level. Yaku entered the palace and met Prince Noah in front of the Empress's room, and before giving Yaku permission to examine his mother, Noah gave him a very interesting news, that the Empress was going to give a big reward for Yaku's contribution this time. Yaku's indifference was not at all what Noah had imagined, so this irritated the boy and he started shouting at Yaku. He reminded him how significant Yaku's contribution was, so it was natural for him to take the reward, and Noah was telling Yaku in advance to give him some preparation time. Then he leaned in curiously and asked Yaku what his wish was, whether wealth, power, or land. But Yaku just smiled and politely declined those things, as he needed none of them. Of course, Noah did not believe it, for which noble human would not want power, so the boy tried to know Yaku's wish and promised that he would tell no one, just one wish. And at this moment, Yaku thought seriously about his wish and told Noah that if possible, he wanted to open a hospital, a place that would not discriminate between nobles and commoners, rich and poor. He would check everyone there and care for everyone, no matter who they were, and Yaku started the Empress's treatment afterwards. Compared to 3 months ago, her skin tone had become much better, which made Yaku breathe a sigh of relief, for finally the medicine had started to take effect, and the Empress heard this and immediately laughed and said that Yaku was becoming very simple and humble now. For she was convinced that she was getting healthier day by day, and remembering that evening lying on the bed, she felt as if she had accepted that her death was very near. And at that time, Yaku's confident statements had lit a flame of hope within her. But thinking about that day made the Empress a little sad. After her death, her power and existence would all be lost in the past, which was extremely terrifying. And the Empress was wondering if a person standing on the brink of death and losing her value was still worthy to rule the empire. Yaku immediately refuted this saying that would never happen, for in all circumstances, no matter how bad the situation might be, the Empress would be needed by her sons and daughters, so at least as a queen, definitely. And moreover, in this empire, there were many citizens who needed her, and as long as they existed, the Empress had great significance. The Empress heard this and laughed again, saying that Yaku's way of speaking was truly pleasing to the ears, and for her, the comforting words Yaku just said were like soul medicine. So the exam ended, and Yaku stood up to ask permission to leave. Then, unintentionally, he reminded the Empress of one more thing. A person who seemed to have died but still managed to overcome it and survive, this would truly be her second life, and life would become even more beautiful for the Empress. And after some time, the Empress's tuberculosis was completely cured, so she returned to her daily routine and called Grand Noble Bruno for a meeting. This time, she called him to talk about his son, for the Empress had decided on a big reward for Yaku. A few days later, Bruno took Yaku to the palace, and Yaku followed his father, feeling a bit anxious about this formal ceremony, thinking if he was worthy to participate in it. But Bruno immediately explained to his son and said that being his son, Yaku should have full confidence in his position, and entering the ceremony, the beautiful Empress Elizabeth appeared before all the ministers. The ceremony began, and the first person to be rewarded was Grand Noble Bruno, for he had made a great contribution to her treatment and the upbringing of the next heir. And for this great achievement, he was given a vast territory which made all the ministers jealous. Immediately after Bruno, the Empress called Yaku, so he nervously went to the Empress and bowed to her, and the Empress promoted Yaku directly from apprentice pharmacist to the rank of royal pharmacist for his contribution. And, apart from this, she also gave him the privilege to open a pharmacy in the royal capital, and Yaku was very surprised by the benefit he received. He turned around and saw Noah smiling, realizing that perhaps Noah had told the Empress his wish. And as soon as the order was issued, the next, Yaku had to welcome a team of skilled carpenters at his home, for they had come on the Empress's order to help build Yaku's pharmacy. This made Yaku very surprised, because he had not yet thought of any plan for his pharmacy. Then Ellen suddenly entered the room, for she had come on Grand Noble Bruno's order to help Yaku with his pharmacy setup, and seeing that Yaku was still a little hesitant, Ellen reminded him that there was no need to debate further, and if Yaku did not like something, he could freely reconstruct it. He could also do renovations, because everything was covered by the Empress. So Yaku started designing. Yaku prepared a very meticulous design, which made the carpenter team's work easier. And to take an overview overview of the situation. Yaku walked around, and the supervisor ran after him to ask the name for the pharmacy signboard. And regarding the name, Yaku had already thought about it, and he considered using the family name, but then changed his mind, for this was Yaku's dream pharmacy, so he did not want to use his family name. After thinking for a while, Yaku smiled as he realized that his medicine shop was in another world, so the name Otherworld Pharmacy seemed right to him. But before Yaku could even finish thinking, the supervisor ordered his subordinates to prepare the signboard, and a few moments later, the signboard for Otherworld Pharmacy was ready. Ellen ran over to praise Yaku and said that the name looked very good and it would get rid of the advertising hustle. However, Yaku did not feel this name was perfect at all, as he just wanted to keep his start a bit low-key. But just then, a white, bearded man came to talk, introducing himself as Buran, who was the head of the Royal Pharmacist Association and wanted to meet the owner of this big pharmacy. So Yaku stepped forward and replied, but after a few sentences, Buran started mocking Yaku, saying that he was selling candy, which made Ellen a bit uncomfortable, and she was about to stand up for Yaku, but he stopped her. Yet Yaku smiled and said that his pharmacy truly had candy-like medicines. And hearing this, Buran laughed loudly and then started bargaining on prices, for according to him, the prices of any newly established pharmacy were very high. But Yaku immediately refused, saying that he would provide medicines to common people at a cheap rate. And of course, Buran did not believe this, or how cheap Yaku's medicines would be for common people. So hearing this, Ellen became even more frustrated and shouted directly in his face that there was no need to twist words, and if he intended to interfere in this pharmacy, then she herself would be his opponent. And Ellen's speed was so fast that Buran got scared and immediately left from there, after which Yaku and Ellen went inside to do a careful inspection of the pharmacy, for Ellen had already helped Yaku with compounding and everything else to prepare all the tools. So Yaku started calculating that he and Ellen could both sell medicines and do compounding as well, so they needed another person to handle the accounting, and Lade immediately offered to do that work. However, since Lade was only 9 years old, Yaku could not let her do such a big job, so he assigned Lade some small tasks in the pharmacy, and Ellen also found this appropriate because having Lade there made the pharmacy's atmosphere much more cheerful. But that evening when Yaku returned to the mansion, he saw some servants crying about something. He ran curiously to ask, and Uncle Cedric accepted the thanks because his leg was injured, so now he could not do his accounting work in the Grand Noble's mansion, and the master had allowed him to go to his hometown to take retirement. And everyone was very sad because Cedric had been working there for a very long time, and they did not want to be separated from him at all. So Yaku immediately got an idea that he would treat Cedric's leg and then ask him to handle his pharmacy's accounts, after which Yaku ran to ask his father for permission, and he agreed immediately and ordered the butler to bring a large chest filled with gold, for opening a pharmacy was very expensive, so this was a small symbol of a parent's love for his child. And in this way, Yaku hired an accountant for his pharmacy, and a few days later, his pharmacy officially opened with Yaku and the entire staff standing in front of the door, and with Yaku's speech, the motto of the Otherworld Pharmacy was established, stating that there would be no discrimination between noble and commoner or rich and poor, for here he sold medicines to the needy. Although some people still thought that Yaku was young and messing with his family's reputation, they were not yet able to trust his capabilities. But overall, the inauguration of Yaku's pharmacy was very successful. Yaku's pharmacy had been open for a month, but no customer had come yet, and Yaku was a bit surprised to see this. However, Ellen found this completely normal because common people went to common pharmacies, and when nobles needed something, they called pharmacists directly to their palaces, so there was no need to go to a pharmacy, and Yaku could only smile and console himself, for he felt that his pharmacy still had a long journey to cover to reach the people. Ellen gave Yaku some more reasons to explain, saying that Royal Pharmacist had always been a rare title, and this pharmacy was opened by a Grand Noble's son, so people's hesitation was natural, and Uncle Cedric started worrying about how they would get customers. Yaku's wish was to sell medicine to those who needed it, but this seemed like the most difficult goal for them. But then Latte ran into the room with excitement and showed that she had surveyed the townspeople and compiled all the reasons why they did not come to his pharmacy. So Latte started her presentation, having sorted out many such questions that people often answered. For firstly, they feared the royal seal, and then the fear of speaking rudely to a noble. Plus, they did not even have good clothes to enter a royal pharmacy, but Yaku had no special concern about any of these things. Latte felt that this was because the guards outside were very scary, so people did not dare to come in. Another thing that seemed most important was that they were worried that medicines here would be very expensive. To make medicines available to everyone initially, Yaku had created a bargaining system, selling cheap to the poor and expensive to the rich. But this rule had created a barrier between him and his patients, so Yaku had to think of another another solution at this time, and Mr. Cedric thought that Yaku should write the prices at the entrance. But Lotte did not find this solution right because most people could not read, so even if they had put up a price list, people would not understand what it was. So Yaku and the entire team had to think of a new solution together. For the next few days, Yaku's shop remained completely empty, and only an old man named Jean came daily as a regular customer to buy some candies, which provided vitamin C, so Yaku guessed that he might be a sailor catching fish in the sea. But when Yaku asked curiously, Jean immediately changed the topic and left from there, and Yaku did not suspect much, so he went out to get fresh air. But then he noticed two more noble-like figures, and two disguised people started calling out to Yaku, and although they were wearing masks, still Yaku could not recognize his parents. After this, he took both of them inside the store, and Yaku's mother was a bit sad as she had tried hard to change her disguise, but her face was revealed soon, which was not funny at all, for it was just an extra mask, and Yaku was smiling. After which, Bruno asked Yaku for permission to tour the store, so Yaku became his parents' guide. And first, on the ground floor was the main part of the store, where the display room, compounding room, and reception were. The second floor was for treating patients with 4 beds and a separate room, while on the third floor, the employees and Yaku rested, and his mother was very happy to see the kitchen there, while the fourth floor was reserved only for Yaku, where he worked on making new medicines. After completing the tour, Bruno confirmed that this was a good shop with sufficient facilities, and they returned to the restroom, and Bruno raised the next issue of customers, for he knew that noble customers did not come here, so only common customers came, and this was the issue on which Yaku wanted to take his advice. So Yaku asked Bruno curiously if there was a way for people to come to his pharmacy comfortably, and hearing this, Yaku's mother immediately suggested a solution, for in her opinion, Yaku should sell beauty products first, because the noble class loved beauty, and if Yaku could sell affordable beauty products to the noble class, then common people would also pay attention to his products. And Bruno also agreed with her initiative, although he clearly reminded Yaku not to sell white powder, for before this, Yaku had worked as a cosmetic safety guarantor, so he knew well that this white powder was made of many metallic components, and using this reduced people's lifespan. And another thing was that nowadays women wanted to make their skin fair and glowing, so they often used the veins dilation technique, which caused harm to their body. And for Bruno, this was contrary to their purpose and an extremely foolish step. But then Yaku received an urgent order as a man came running and said that his young lady had fallen ill, and he wanted to call Yaku to treat her. So Yaku asked permission from his parents and immediately left. From there, and boarding the cart, he saw the young lady Chloe, whose face had turned pale, and she was looking towards Yaku, but she was still conscious, so it was not too serious yet. And Yaku used his medicinal eye to assess her condition, and he immediately saw cut marks on her arm, which was exactly the vein dilation technique. Yaku explained to Chloe that she was not ill at all, but because she kept dilating her veins, her infection risk was higher. Then Yaku called Chloe to his shop so he could prescribe medicine for her, and sitting in the shop, Chloe told Yaku about her trouble while crying. The man she loved had rejected her because he only liked girls with fair and glowing skin. Seeing the girl crying so much, Yaku prescribed medicine and asked her to come back after a week, for he would prepare a beauty product according to her wish. So in the next few days, Yaku started preparing the cosmetic mixture. He had to test it on himself first, and knowing that Yaku would make white powder left Ellen surprised as well. But Yaku already had a product to replace that unsafe method, and he planned that the next time he met the Empress, he would ask her to ban those dangerous products. And exactly 1 week later, Sister Chloe came to the shop to pick up the goods. So Yaku took her inside and explained the usage step by step, for this was not a powder cosmetic, but a cream-like cosmetic that not only made the skin fair, but also protected it from the sun. And next was the highlighting powder, which Ellen applied to Chloe's face, and immediately her skin started glowing. And a few moments later, when the beauty treatment was completed, Chloe looked at herself in the mirror and could not believe that her face could be so smooth and radiant, for it was completely different from the cosmetics she used before. And finally, the makeup remover to be used before Chloe slept made her skin even more glowing. So Chloe received the cosmetic set and burst into tears, for now she would not have to bear the pain of vein dilation, after which the series of promoting Otherworld Pharmacy's new cosmetic line began, and Lotte called people to try it with a basket outside the shop, describing it as a beauty product used by nobles, but very affordable, so it became extremely popular among women, and in a short time, Yaku's shop became crowded, and to tell the truth, no rumor spreads faster than word of mouth. So seeing the crowd of customers at Yaku's store, male customers also got excited and came to experience the service, and Sister Chloe also brought her close friend along for help. But due to the sudden increase in demand, Yaku was unable to complete production fast enough, so Sister Chloe immediately proposed a business deal, for she wanted wanted Yaku to open his own distinct cosmetic company, and she would become an investor in this venture. It seemed that Yaku would benefit the most from this, so he took Uncle Cedric's opinion, and he also felt that this was extremely beneficial for Yaku, for doing business with the Chatillon family was truly a great fortune. Mr. Cedric would handle the paperwork, so Yaku just had to give approval. And in this way, within a few days, Yaku's cosmetics store was ready, and Sister Chloe also appointed the best cosmetic pharmacist for Yaku. And the result of everyone's hard work was that when the next team meeting happened, Lod's reports received abundant praise from users, which gave Yaku inspiration to develop otherworld pharmacy even further. But then the Empress called Yaku to the palace, for despite having new beauty products, not letting her use them made the Empress a bit annoyed. So to console her, Yaku gave her a new product, and after this, they discussed that dangerous vein dilation method, and after deliberation, the Empress banned that method throughout the empire. One more thing she wanted was for Yaku to increase the prices of medicines and beauty products, for his medicine prices were too low, and if this was not done, other merchants would not be able to continue trade, which would affect the empire's economy. The Empress also wanted Yaku to share the new cosmetic formula, for Yaku could not monopolize the country's cosmetics industry. Yaku heard this and agreed immediately because he had wanted to share this knowledge with others for a long time. After receiving the reward, he had to go inspect it, so Bruno took Yaku to inspect the situation in the Marseille region. This was a huge territory that the Empress had given to Bruno when he contributed to the treatment of her illness. This region was considered the empire's major port and also a large producer of medicinal herbs. So for Yaku, the inheritance value of this area was huge, and now Bruno was paying attention to all the problems mentioned by the former owner. Everything was running steadily, except for one issue that was giving the previous owner a headache, and this issue was about the East Aden Trade Association of the Netheril Kingdom, for they were using that kingdom's authority like a shield for tax evasion. So Bruno thought for a while, and then made a decision, but he wanted to hear Yaku's opinion before considering the next step, and, if possible, he wanted to reduce the tax a bit, so that the situation would improve. But then he looked at Yaku, and the Lord immediately understood his intent, so he told Yaku that the sea of this region was very beautiful, and he should go play there a bit, and knowing that nothing would be gained by staying here, Yaku immediately left from there. As soon as he stepped on the seashore, he saw that Blanche and Lot were making a sandcastle, and seeing Yaku come, Blanche held his hand, and making cute gestures, asked for permission to play for a while, seeing which Lotte also immediately started playing with them, and promised Yaku that she would keep a close eye on the young mistress, and both pleaded so strongly that Yaku had to agree, but he only wet his feet, and they could only go into the water up to their feet, not too far. But Ellen was also present there, and seeing both children happy, she also felt like going down to play in the sea, so Ellen called Yaku to come with her, but he refused and sat on the shore watching Blanche. Looking at that little girl reminded Yaku of his old sister, for when he was in the old world, Yaku used to go to the beach with his sister every year, and his sister also wanted to play in the sea, but she was too young, so Yaku could not agree. To convince her, Yaku promised that when she turned 5, he would let her play in the sea, and both brother and sister made the promise while intertwining their fingers. But then it was discovered that his sister had a serious illness, and Yaku's promise could no longer be fulfilled. Thinking this, Yaku heard Lotte scream, for the sea waves were pulling Blanche away. So without thinking, Yaku immediately jumped into the sea. But the current was opposite, and Blanche kept getting pulled further away, and the little girl slowly got tired and started drowning. So Yaku could not bear the grief of losing his sister again, and the flow was very fast, so even if Yaku dived, it would be difficult to catch Blanche. Then a thought came to Yaku's mind that if only there were no seawater, he could catch Blanche. So immediately, the sacred seal on Yaku's hand shone, and a large round hole formed in the middle of the sea containing no water at all, and Ellen rubbed her eyes. She came to her senses and started staring at the scene, thinking Yaku might have used divine magic, but looking closely she realized that was not the case. Where she stood was the seabed, and the sand was completely dry, so Ellen broke into a sweat, wondering what Yaku had done, after which Yaku brought both of them to the shore, where Blanche woke up and started crying bitterly out of fear. She hugged Yaku, and Yaku comforted the child and activated his medicine eye to check Blanche, and fortunately the child had not swallowed water, so she was fine. But then Ellen spoke up asking Yaku what he had just done, and Yaku did not know exactly either, thinking he had awakened some divine magic, but Ellen did not think so, for Yaku had just erased a large part of the sea, and no, divine magic could do that, and Lotte heard this and was drenched in sweat. So to lighten the heavy atmosphere, Ellen immediately praised Yaku, saying that what he had done was truly amazing, and his divine power was now fully successful in saving Blanche. Yaku had saved his own sister, but sitting on the bed that night, Yaku kept kept remembering the afternoon, seen repeatedly, for when he wanted to save Blanche, his intention was only to remove the seawater. But suddenly everything present there vanished completely, and since the human body is 70% water, if Yaku had made any mistake at that time, then both Blanche and Ellen could have been in danger. But then Lotte called Yaku and recalled the tidal incident again, and Yaku thought Lotte might be scared of his divine power from that time. But no, Lotte was scared that she could not save her young mistress. And seeing this, Yaku encouraged Lotte, for she did not know how to swim, so even if she had drowned, she could not have saved Blanche. And conversely, Lotte's move at that time was the right move, and although Lotte was not his sister, Yaku still considered her a part of his family, so it was fortunate that she was still safe, and Lotte became emotional and knelt down to give Yaku her thanks, and his encouraging words made Yaku feel relieved too. So in this way, a strange cult found out that Yaku had erased a sea area with his divine power, and that too without leaving a shadow. To them, Yaku was a heretic, so they gathered armies to hunt him and resolved to finish him at any cost. The trip to Marseille had ended, and Yaku's otherworld pharmacy opened again, having been closed for only a week. But Yaku's customers had already tripled, which made both Yaku and Ellen sweat, for such a large number of customers would perhaps force them to work overtime again. But then Yaku noticed two people dressed in white whispering something. He happily went to them to give advice, but they glared at Yaku and left immediately. And seeing this, Yaku still found those two men very suspicious, and Ellen and Lotte felt the same, for before Yaku, Lotte had come to counsel them, but they ignored her words and just paid attention to Yaku. So for safety reasons, Yaku made a new decision and ordered the night team to remain even more alert, for he did not want such things to affect other customers. But the next morning, as the night shift changing employees opened the pharmacy door, a mad horse pulling a mud-filled cart came straight in through the fog. This news was immediately given to Grand Noble Bruno, who became very angry, and he considered this a declaration of war against his family. Bruno ordered the knight to report to the Empress. Then he asked Yaku if he had seen any suspicious person. Yaku guessed it could be the Pharmacist Association or the two men in white seen yesterday, but since there was no evidence yet, he could not draw any conclusion and wanted to acquire more accurate info. So after this, Yaku ran to inspect the pharmacy, and Uncle Cedric was very upset by this incident as the whole shop was filled with smelly mud. Although they used divine magic to purify the air, it was difficult to remove so much mud immediately, yet fortune was hidden in misfortune too, for only the first floor was damaged while the upper floors were still fine, and Lotte and Ellen medicines had already been transported to Yaku's mansion, so the damage was not significant this time. But then Mr. Jean came with some of his friends. Seeing that Yaku was in trouble, he came forward to help, and not only Jean's group but the surrounding people also ran to help Yaku with the cleanup, for everyone was very angry at the culprits of this incident, and although they received no payment, they were still enthusiastic to help Yaku, and seeing so much love from so many people made Yaku extremely emotional, so he and Uncle Cedric bowed their heads to thank everyone. But then a woman came running and started calling Yaku, crying bitterly as she told Yaku that her father had suddenly fainted due to sunstroke, and no matter how much she tried, she could not wake him up. So Yaku handed over the entire shop's goods to Uncle Cedric and followed her to save the woman's father. And to be safe, Yaku brought all kinds of medicine with him. But as they moved forward, he got an even more ominous feeling that something was wrong. This woman was taking him very far from the royal capital, and by the time Yaku turned back to ask, the woman had vanished. Immediately after that, countless white-clothed people appeared and surrounded Yaku, for they were the judges of the Holy Empire who had come to clarify Yaku's shadowless nature and the incident of erasing the sea in Marseille. And in his lessons with Ellen, Yaku had learned more about the Divine Temple, which was the origin of gods and divine magic in this world, and it was also the world's largest religious organization. Their job was to assess divine power in newborns and nurture them. And remembering this, Yaku recalled what Lotte had said, according to which a noble could be demoted to a commoner without divine magic. And not only that, the Divine Temple gave crowns and divine punishments to the kings of every country, possessing power greater than even a state. And Ellen had reminded Yaku to be especially careful of the Heretic Investigation Bureau, for this bureau was expert in destroying heretics and evil spirits who misused divine power. And this organization's army was powerful and cruel, yet now Yaku faced the Heretic Investigation Bureau's director Salomon, a man who also had no shadow and who had dared to open a large medicine shop in the middle of the city in broad daylight, so they knew that Salomon could not understand if Yaku was foolish or just confident, while Yaku just kept smiling and trying to explain that he was not an evil spirit but just a human. Of course, Salomon did not believe Yaku's words, and he ordered Yaku to put down his belongings and step back because he did not want to create a major incident. So Yaku had to obey him, and Salomon had prepared an evil spirit restraining structure to catch Yaku. But when this divine magical structure was deployed, it vanished instantly in the blink of an eye. This left the entire heretic investigation team shocked, and one of them raised his staff and started raining bullets while surrounding Yaku. Yaku remained completely calm, and he used nitrogen to create a wall of fire for himself. Then he removed oxygen from the air to extinguish the fire, and wondering if ice would work since fire had no effect, they threw an ice sword towards Yaku. But as soon as it touched the barrier made by Yaku, it immediately disappeared, and this ability made the entire investigation team sweat. They believed that Yaku's divine magic was very potent, so catching him alive was now too dangerous, and it was necessary to eliminate him immediately. Receiving Salamon's orders, the entire investigation team started forming a squad to attack Yaku, and every person who possessed any ability was continuously raining bullets on him, as all 5 elements of the earth combined to attack Yaku. However, even after a massive explosion, Yaku suffered no harm, for he had created a huge ice wall to block all attacks. By this time, Yaku had also become a bit troubled, and he emitted powerful energy which terrified Salomon, so he quickly ordered everyone to form a defensive formation. But it was too late, for the power emanating from Yaku made Salomon stumble and fall, while the others ran to help him. And at this time, Yaku lifted a massive ice chunk and was threatening them, saying they should stop immediately, as he came to this world to save people not to fight. And if they still did this, then he would have to take revenge. And Yaku's entire body began to glow, which made Salomon break into a sweat, for he realized that this immense divine power and the holy seal on the shoulder left no shadow on Yaku because he was already radiant. And Salomon could not believe that he was meeting this person face to face. He shouted loudly to remind all his companions that Yaku was the incarnation of the medicine god, and the entire group immediately confessed their sins before Yaku and bowed. And due to falling from the horse, Salomon's leg was bleeding profusely. This was blasphemy against the god, so he decided to commit suicide to make atonement before Yaku. Salomon took out a dagger and was about to kill himself when Yaku stopped him, saying that he had come to save people from the beginning. If they did not bother him and his pharmacy, then no one would die. After which, Yaku activated his medical eyes to diagnose Salomon. Due to the fall from the horse, he already had an open bone fracture, and the light emitting was white, which indicated that Yaku could still treat him, and the best way was to amputate Salomon's limb. But then a red light emitted, which forced Yaku to think again, for if he cut the limb, now a blood infection could occur. Yaku had to adopt another method of treatment, and surgery would be more effective to join the bone. But in this world, there was no such thing as surgery, so only Yaku could do this, and Yaku became a little hesitant. He could not understand if he would be able to do this work properly or not, but after thinking for a while, he ordered everyone to bring a horse cart. He made a stone platform and laid Salomon on it, for Yaku had made his decision. Being a doctor, he could not leave him like this, so he had to perform his surgery. Yaku went to the minor surgery room and started giving anesthesia to Salomon, and that man was obeying Yaku's every instruction without argument, so he did not complain at all. And earlier Yaku had performed experimental surgeries on animals many times, but this was his first actual try on a human, so he was indeed a bit nervous. Yet Yaku took a deep breath and then he started the work. At this time, if he were not there, then there was no one to save Salomon, and after some time, Yaku came out. For now, Salomon's life was saved, and he just needed a little more time for recovery, so Yaku let the other people take him back. Instead of giving punishment, Yaku considered showing mercy more appropriate, and the entire group immediately gave full prostration while thanking the medicine deity. But Yaku stopped them immediately and said clearly that he is no medicine god or divine figure. He is just a human who has only one wish: to save people by becoming a doctor. So saving Salomon was his responsibility, and if they truly wanted to thank him, then Yaku only wanted this to be kept completely secret from today onwards. Many months later, Salomon recovered completely, and he himself came to Yaku's pharmacy with a beautiful gift. For after that incident, Salomon had thrown his full strength to get the position of Archbishop of the Divine Temple, and now he promised Yaku that he would suppress any news of heresy related to him. But before that, he asked for a little time from Yaku, so Yaku had to close the pharmacy for a short while in the afternoon. Taking the cake brought by Salomon in hand, he was just finding a place to eat secretly in a corner, when little Blanche started calling him from the gate outside. Today was her afternoon appointment to play with Yaku, so she had arrived early, and at the same time inside the pharmacy, Salomon brought a very classy box, for inside was a staff, and he wanted to give it to Yaku. This staff was called the Medicine God Staff, and apart from the 5 basic attributes, it could also help Yaku in combat, and in treatment as well. So Yaku was a bit confused whether to accept such a valuable gift or not, but seeing Salomon's excited face, he took it and tried it a little, and as soon as Yaku poured divine power into the staff, a bright light came out, which was a clear sign sign for Salomon that the staff has accepted Yaku as its true master. And that stick was so beautiful that Ellen got mesmerized just seeing it. So Yaku let her hold it for a while, but as soon as Ellen held it, the staff slipped from her hand and fell. Salomon immediately explained that this divine staff is not of this world and only Yaku can use it. So Yaku quickly picked up the staff, but then his gaze fell on many buttons on it, and in curiosity he turned and asked if it could also fly, and Yaku's guess was absolutely correct. As soon as he poured a little divine power, the staff immediately rose in the air and had the power to take Yaku up as well. And after the meeting, Yaku escorted Salomon to the door, and before leaving he had another gift for Yaku, a pendant. It helped in controlling magical powers, and as soon as he wore it, Yaku's shadow started looking exactly like a normal human. Yaku needed this very thing, so he accepted it without any formalities. And after this, Yaku took Lade and his sister Blanche to tour the city. He fulfilled every need of his sister, and seeing both of them so happy, Yaku was also genuinely happy. In this way, the matter with the Heretic Investigation Bureau ended completely, and then Yaku's store started climbing like before, and according to Yaku's estimate, the number of customers was increasing even more. So now it was time to increase employees. But noble pharmacists were very rare, and common pharmacists already worked for the Pharmacist Association. During this time, Yaku unintentionally heard some complaints from people that his pharmacy was always full and everyone could not wait in the long line, so they went to buy medicines at other shops. But because Yaku's shop was not under the management of the Pharmacist Association, his medicines were not available in their stores at all. Now Yaku had understood the problem, that the Pharmacist Association was the biggest obstacle, which was not letting the right medicines reach the people. Thinking of a solution for this, Yaku discussed making a new association with Ellen. For right now, both the cosmetic shop and his pharmacy, Ellen was handling the management. According to the Empire's legal system, they could easily form a new union. Once this was formed, Yaku would attract other stores to join his association. This would also reduce the crowd at the main store. After thinking, Yaku handed the paperwork to Hedrick. Regarding permissions, he might have to go to the palace to meet the queen himself. This otherworld pharmacy was growing so fast that old Buran had to call an emergency meeting with the Pharmacist Association. A noble family's pharmacy was selling medicines so cheap that even the poor could buy them. This fact was intolerable to Buran. This time, he decided to destroy the otherworld pharmacy at any cost. He strictly forbade all association members from keeping any contact with Yaku's shop. If anyone broke the rule, their license would be cancelled, and they would be expelled from the association immediately. The next morning, Pierre brought his daughter Mary to pharmacist Donald's shop for help, but even after knocking for a long time, no one opened the door. His daughter was very sick. At that same time, Yaku and Latte were passing by, and Yaku invited him to his pharmacy to check the child if he had no objection. Seeing his daughter suffering, Pierre quietly followed Yaku. Outside the otherworld pharmacy, there was still a long line of people today, but Yaku took Pierre and little Mary towards the side gate instead of the main door. Seeing this, Pierre became a little disappointed. He felt that perhaps Yaku considered him different, but he understood the real reason. When Yaku handed him a mask, he realized this was to prevent Mary's illness from spreading to anyone else. They both wore masks, and then Yaku started checking the little girl's condition. First, he needed some basic information about Mary. At this moment, Mary had a high fever. Her body was very weak, and she was not even conscious. It was not clear to Yaku yet which disease she had. Then he asked Pierre what Mary's weight was. Pierre fell into confusion, so Yaku took out a scale himself and asked him to seat Mary on it. Seeing this for the first time, Pierre was a little scared too. So Yaku calmly explained that knowing the weight is necessary to determine the correct dosage of medicine. Giving the wrong amount can be ineffective and sometimes even cause side effects. Pierre was surprised to hear this because in other clinics, children were simply given half the adult dose. No one used such caution like Yaku. After checking for a while, Yaku finally guessed the disease. Little Mary had a very severe cold. Pierre was stunned. Such high fever, seizures, and foam from the mouth. He thought it was the effect of some evil spirit, but Yaku clearly said it was not just a cold, but the flu. Seeing the confusion still on Pierre's face, Yaku had to explain a little more. A virus had infected Mary. Yaku went to the medicine cupboard and brought out a vial for the illness. He explained that right now, Mary's body is so weak that eating medicine would not be as effective. Therefore, steam inhalation would be the best method. This would warm the child's body and the virus would start weakening on its own. Despite the long explanation, Pierre understood only half of it. So Yaku stopped there and got to work. The treatment continued till late evening, and truthfully, Yaku's method worked surprisingly fast. Mary's fever gradually went down. Yaku prepared medicine for the next 5 days as well. Despite it being late at night, he reminded Pierre that this type of illness flares up more in the evening, so if any problem appeared again, he could return to the clinic without hesitation. Yaku walked Pierre to the gate, and just then, Pierre fearfully asked what the fee for the checkup was. was. Yaku smiled and stated a very small amount. He said that examining children is easy, so he does not charge much. Pierre bowed his head and left. While looking at the shining building of the pharmacy, he suddenly understood it is impossible for the Pharmacist Association to compete with Yaku. Upon reaching home, he busied himself with work. After some time, his wife came into the room and said that Mary was in a deep sleep and felt no pain now. But when she found out that Pierre had taken Mary to the Otherworld pharmacy, she got scared. After all, the association had forbidden going there. But Pierre clearly stated that if Yaku had not been there today, Mary would not have survived. Knowledge, treatment, and care, the Otherworld pharmacy was far ahead of everyone else in everything. And in reality, a pharmacist's true image should be just like that. Thinking this, Pierre felt that he himself was far behind. No magic, no knowledge, and no confidence like Yaku. He wished he could get a little of Yaku's experience so he could save lives too. His wife understood what Pierre was thinking, but going down that path meant standing against the Pharmacist Association, which was almost like suicide. Amidst so many troubles, Pierre could not stop himself and cried. Even being a pharmacist, he could not help his daughter. He was feeling ashamed of himself. The next morning, the Pharmacist Association's emergency meeting was called again. Shops and income were continuously falling. The Baron was angry, but could do nothing because the other World Pharmacy had the Empress's support, and on top of that, archbishops were also visiting often, so practically no one could even touch Yaku. The Baron looked towards Pierre because his shop was the closest. Pierre took a deep breath and stood up and spoke the truth. If any person sitting here had never gone to the Otherworld pharmacy, then they should go once and see. You will understand yourself why people do not return to your shops. There is no difference between rich and poor there. Everyone gets the same treatment. The Baron stood up in anger and slammed his hand on the table. To him, all this was just the customer's curiosity. He said the Otherworld pharmacy was taking advantage of the Empress's privilege to lower prices, and this was worsening the association's condition. The Baron suddenly cried while saying all this. For years, he had been providing medicines to the common people, but rich people never came to care for them. No help, nothing. Just think if that pharmacy closed down one day, then the common people would have no option left for treatment. Here, Pierre was still trying to explain to everyone that the Otherworld pharmacy is so advanced because they focus on improving patients. Instead of destroying them, they should learn from them how the correct treatment of patients is done and how medicines are used correctly. But those people were selling such medicines, whose source was unclear, and it was not even known if they were safe for humans or not. Just then, the Baron slammed his hand on the table in anger and silenced Pierre. He felt that if Pierre did not trust the Pharmacist Association, then he should leave from here right now. And just at that moment, Pierre lost his job. After that, the Baron's men ruined the condition of his pharmacy too. Pierre just stood there watching. He had no strength to do anything. Then suddenly Yaku arrived there. He ran straight towards Pierre and started asking him everything. This time, Pierre did not hide anything from him. He told the whole story, how he broke the association's rules and took Mary to his pharmacy for a checkup, and the Baron did not like that. He canceled all of Pierre's business licenses. At first, Pierre thought that perhaps the association would listen to him, but in the end, he had nothing left. Being expelled from the association meant that he could not start a business in this city now, so Pierre made a plan that he would go to another country and start again. Yaku heard this and understood everything. Pierre just had to join another organization, and he could work again, and coincidentally today itself, the Empress had given Yaku permission to open his own pharmacist guild. In this Guild of Yakos, a place would be built where research and mixing of new types of medicines would happen. He extended his hand and invited Pierre. If he had no objection, then he could help him. Hearing this, Pierre cried. He finally got a new job in this country. In just a few days, the interior of his shop changed, and the shelves were filled with medicines. But right before the grand opening, Pierre was still a little anxious. He had a doubt whether he would be able to do well or not. Just then, little Mary came running and started pulling his trousers to motivate him. Just for that reason, Pierre composed himself and regained his confidence. He opened the door of the pharmacy. Outside, many people were standing in line. They found out that this pharmacy was now connected to the Otherworld pharmacy. That is why those people had come here to avoid the long queue. For the first time in Pierre's life, such a big crowd was standing in front of him, and his eyes unknowingly became moist. Finally, he would be able to give the right medicines to people. Here, Bruno had a friend named Camille. One day, the temple people caught him on charges of doing cruel experiments on humans. Even during the investigation, Camille was scolding Bruno instead. According to him, Bruno would never be able to understand the reality of this world. Humans die anyway, and those people kept making new humans anyway. So if some people die during experiments, the world will not end. Camille considered this the natural beauty of this world. Hearing this, Bruno suddenly woke up shocked from his sleep. He was seeing every moment spent with his friend Camille again in his dream. Bruno had still not been able to understand why Camille went down such a dark path. The next morning, Yaku's entire family was having breakfast. Seeing Bruno Bruno quiet at the table, Yaku felt that perhaps he was sick, but it was nothing like that. He was just remembering old, painful memories. Just then, the butler came running and gave the Grand Noble a letter. This was a letter from his elder son, Paul. Hearing Paul's name, little Blanche got a little scared. In the letter, Paul had stated that this year he was going to return later than normal. Hearing this, Yaku's mother became a little tense. She was worried whether Paul's studies were going well or not, and lest he put himself under too much pressure. Blanche thought a lot, but she could not remember her brother's university's name. Then, Lotte explained to her again. Elder brother Paul studies at Novarut University, which is the capital's biggest and best university. Getting admission there itself proves that the person is very talented. But Lotte also noticed that Yaku had already surpassed Paul with his hard work. Yaku gave a slight smile while feeling shy, but in reality he was just awkward. Just then, Bruno called him and asked him to come to his room after eating. Going inside, he told Yaku that next month the fair season was going to start in the capital. Yaku had also heard about this. This festival is held only once a year and lasts for a whole month. Merchants come from far and wide. The crowd increases significantly. That is why Bruno was warning him beforehand. Warning, Yaku did not understand what he meant. Then Bruno told the real reason for Paul's letter. Paul had written that on Pot Island near the neighboring country, a strange epidemic has spread. All 1,000 people there have died. Hearing this, Yaku's hands and feet went cold. This disease was completely unusual. Yaku wanted to ask more, but Bruno also did not have much information. Novarut University's top research committee had brought back 2 infected people for study, but both of them also died from the same disease. Hearing this, Yaku started sweating. It meant the disease was highly contagious. Bruno also silently agreed with his thought. Although the research team had now controlled the outbreak on that island, no one knew if the cargo ships coming and going there had spread the infection or not. And before going to the capital's fair, everyone has to stop at Marseille port, which falls under Yaku's family's territory. That is why Bruno wanted to find a way to stop this disease from spreading to the imperial capital. In eldest son Paul's research group, there were a total of 4 people, but 2 of them were already infected with that strange disease. Their limbs were so badly damaged that they could not be saved. To protect against the epidemic, both their bodies were given a proper funeral, and since the elder son, Paul, was also involved in this experiment, he was kept in confinement in his room and was not permitted to go out. That is why the elder son Paul could not return home immediately. At Novarut University, they were also using a new device. According to Paul, this device was quite similar to the microscope invented by Yaku. That is why Yaku told Bruno to send a letter to his elder brother requesting a sample of the disease. Meanwhile, a big meeting was going on in the palace. Since the establishment of the other, World Pharmacy, deaths caused by disease had decreased by about 20%. Not only that, the products sold in Yaku's pharmacy were also extremely popular among people, which boosted the empire's economy, and this was a remarkable achievement. For such a big achievement, the Empress wanted to reward Yaku too, but since Yaku was still very young, the Empress temporarily stopped it. The next day, Yaku told Ellen the whole story of that deadly disease. Ellen listened and got a little scared too. If this disease is truly contagious, then now, the fair season was about to arrive. Yaku also wanted to stop it, but time was very limited. The fair was going to be organized just 2 weeks later, and now they could not stop goods from reaching the imperial capital. Just then, Lotte came running to call Yaku, holding the letter sent by elder brother Paul in her hand. Yaku read it and was literally soaked in sweat. Truly, the plague existed in this world too. Immediately after that, Yaku and Ellen started pandemic prevention preparations at once. They sent their 2 close disciples first to the Marseille area for Lord Adam's assistance, while Yaku and Ellen reached there later after handling the entire arrangement here. After that, Yaku and Ellen gave a report to Bruno. According to what Paul had stated in the letter, Yaku confirmed that this was indeed the plague, an extremely terrifying disease which had wiped out half the population of Europe in the 14th century. The mortality rate of this disease was very high, up to about 70%. If it infected the lungs, then death was almost certain. Although Bruno had only read about this in books, he still understood the severity of the plague. The last time this disease spread was 210 years ago. Bruno was very worried. If this disease spread to the imperial capital, then the capital city's destruction was inevitable. In this matter, Yaku already had the cure for the plague. He had also developed a new medicine to fight this disease. But right now, their focus was on controlling the number of infected people first. Hearing this, Bruno immediately understood what Yaku was trying to say, and both father and son immediately reached the palace to inform the Empress. The Empress showed full cooperation and decided to impose instant control on goods entering the imperial capital. Yaku requested the Empress to set up extra epidemic inspection checkpoints at the city gates as well. The inspection work would be done by the people of his pharmacist union. Another critical issue was that the plague spreads not only from humans, but also from rats. That is why Yaku wanted the Empress to take the decision that the entire imperial imperial Laha capital remain united to repel rats and also sanitize clothes with boiling water. The Empress accepted every request of Yaku. Protection of citizens was her responsibility. She would not let this disease spread in the imperial capital. Immediately after this, the epidemic control campaign began. In the pharmacy, Yaku called Pierre and explained the effectiveness of the microscope. Pierre also prepared very quickly according to Yaku's instructions. The medicines Yaku gave him, Pierre divided into 1,000 parts and distributed them to all pharmacies in the imperial capital. As soon as someone was infected, those medicines would be distributed for free. After giving all the information to Pierre, Yaku received assurance that the imperial capital would handle the medicines properly. However, to keep the fighting continuing, Yaku would have to go to Marseille port. In the palace, the Empress was now coordinating all cases related to this strange disease, thanks to quarantine centers. So far, no major problem had occurred. Additionally, Archbishop Solomon had assembled his followers to purify the imperial capital's air using divine air magic. In this way, for some time, they had gained full control over the rumors of this mysterious disease. When the survey of the imperial capital was completed from Yaku's side and everything was fine, he and Ellen started their journey to Marseille, although Yaku was still very worried, a pandemic about which he only knew from history. Yaku did not know whether he would be able to win against it or not. Seeing Yaku's worry, Ellen spoke to him to encourage and assure him. Everyone knew what Yaku's capabilities were, and she was confident that Yaku would succeed. Of course, others would think the same. Yaku looked back. Uncle Cedric and little Lot came to the door to bid them goodbye, along with many encouraging words too. Because of this, Yaku gained even more confidence for this battle. Yaku and Ellen had reached Marseille. It had been a long time since he returned here. Just that, he did not expect the reason for his return would be that deadly disease. Seeing a large fleet of ships coming to the dock, Yaku was confirmed that the disease's pathogens would be in those ships. That is why, before the fair started, he had to complete the quarantine work here. Ellen's two disciples immediately came out to welcome them. As Yaku had given instructions, they asked all ships arriving at the port to stop right there and participate in the quarantine process. Then they also gave Yaku the cargo list and the crew members' health checkup results. Their work was perfectly done, and now it was time for Yaku and Ellen to engage in the next task. Yaku and Ellen took a small boat and reached the cargo ships. Upon not getting permission to land at the wharf instantly for unloading goods, the captain became quite angry, but eventually he continued to cooperate fully with Yaku. Yaku called the ship's doctor and checked the entire list of crew members present there. Then, Yaku and Ellen started inspecting the crew and cargo. Overall, there was no major problem, but Yaku soon found out that in some crew members, symptoms of minor bleeding were appearing. Therefore, he gave the doctor a note and gave instructions to bring medicine for the crew as soon as they reached the dock. The first phase of quarantine was completed smoothly, but this was only the first ship. Countless ships were still waiting for inspection before coming to the dock. Just then, an apple was thrown straight towards Yaku. In anger, the captain scolded him. It had been 2 days. He had to wait for 2 days without permission to go to the dock. All his cargo was fresh. If he reached late and the goods got spoiled, then whose responsibility would it be? Just then another captain shouted in between. He too had waited 2 days, and now he did not want to wait anymore. Nor did he want to give way to anyone who wanted to come to the dock first to unload cargo. Seeing the loud argument between both captains, Ellen got angry. She had just taken out her staff when suddenly a cannonball fell straight onto the sea surface, which scared Ellen. Obviously, she had not done anything. From a distance, a large fleet of ships waving the Empire's flag appeared. Both captains got scared because this was the San Fleuve's Crimson Fleet, which the Empire also recognized. The admiral of the fleet was none other than Yaku's pharmacy expert, Mr. Jean. Standing on the ship, Jean shouted at both captains, "If you want to enter the Empire for trade, then you have to follow our laws." The royal appointed pharmacist, who was also the local authority of the Marseille region, was personally managing the quarantine. If anyone mumbled even one more word, he would throw them into the sea. With Jean's help, the captains instantly became obedient. Yaku and Ellen went to his ship to thank him. John was feeling a little lonely because Yaku's pharmacy was temporarily closed. He often thought about the candies available on the ship. These candies were very effective for those who often stayed at sea, so he made a plan that next time when Yaku's pharmacy reopens, he will place a big order with his other ships. After this, Yaku and Ellen reassembled with their two students and started preparing to report the collected information. At this same time, Lord Adam came running and told Yaku that in Estark village, symptoms of high fever are appearing in many people, and some have even died. Estark village was a small fishing village to the west of here. The story was that after receiving information about Marseille port's quarantine campaign, some traders smuggled goods from there. Now Yaku could not wait any longer. He immediately decided to go to Estark village. He handed over the management of the village to Ellen. He was a little worried because Yaku was the one who could trace the source of this disease. Without Yaku, how would this work be done? But Ellen's presence assured him, for now, there were adequate medical supplies and manpower there. Yaku was confident that if everyone worked together, they could stop the epidemic. Yaku took out his divine staff and started flying on it. On the way, Yaku assessed the possibilities. Rats and estarks, ships must have sneaked into the village, infecting the people. By now, catching them had become difficult. He had to stop infected cases from spreading to other regions. While thinking too much, Yaku was almost about to collide with a tree, but somehow he flew over the tree. During this, Yaku remembered the Archbishop's instructions. This staff was not of this world. As long as someone owned it, it would help in many tasks. Yaku decided that he had to stop this epidemic at any cost. Shortly after, he reached the coastal village named Estark. Due to the terror of the disease, some villagers were scared and were preparing to leave the village. Obviously, Yaku would not let them leave so easily. He flew into their path and demanded they return to the village. He would explain the whole situation later. However, due to Yaku's unusual clothes and sudden appearance, the villagers thought Yaku was the evil spirit spreading the disease in the village. They readied their weapons out of fear. Yaku got very angry. He immediately surrounded the entire village and created a huge ice wall so no one could leave. After this, Yaku removed his hood, revealing the royal pharmacist badge. Everyone instantly recognized him. Yaku explained to them that he had come here to save the people. He could not give a 100% guarantee, but promised that he would save the maximum number of people. The villagers accepted his words and returned to the village. Yaku immediately held a meeting with the village administrator. Before explaining the situation, he took out a map of Estark. He divided the village into 3 zones: high infection zone, potential infection zone, and not infected zone. Yaku wanted the people to seal the high infection zone so that serious patients could be treated with priority first. According to him, if everyone worked together, it was possible to stop the epidemic. Meanwhile, out at sea, where Mr. Jean's Crimson Fleet was monitoring, his first mate saw an unusual ship and called Jean for inspection. When viewed through binoculars, there were many flags on this ship. The most significant thing that made Jean sweat was the flag requesting medical assistance. This ship was clearly infected. Jean ordered his fleet for inspection. Some crew members climbed the mast and started observing with binoculars. But just then, they suddenly saw that all members of that ship had died. They were literally soaked in sweat out of fear. The first mate panicked. He could not understand what to do next, and he asked Jean in a trembling voice, "Sir, should we board that ship for further inspection?" Jean's answer was absolutely clear. No. Going there without a prestigious royal pharmacist meant certain death. The risk of infection was so high that there was no chance of survival. So Jean immediately took a firm decision. He would calmly bid farewell to the people present on that ship and then order the crew to ready the cannons. Emotions in Jean's heart were completely mixed. Before separating from Yaku, he had given him medicine to cure the disease. If those smugglers had obediently kept their cargo separate, they would not have lost their lives at sea. But at that time, there was no other way to stop the disease's pathogens from spreading to the mainland. Under compulsion, Jian sank that smuggler ship to the bottom of the ocean. On Yaku's side, the first phase of distributing medicine to those safe from infection was complete. Now only one zone remained, the most infected area. And honestly, Yaku wanted to go there alone. He clearly told the rest of the medical staff to stay right there. Everyone was worried about his safety, but Yaku avoided their gaze and left. He had tension inside him too. This was just the first step. As soon as he entered, the air felt so heavy and suffocating that Yaku's breath got stuck. But that place was his real battlefield. Over at Marseille port, signs of a manpower shortage began to appear. Seeing this, Professor Casper asked the chief pharmacist if she could help a little. The chief pharmacist just glanced at her and turned away. According to him, Casper was already quite aged and could practically contribute nothing to the work. Seeing his rude attitude, her disciple was quite hurt. But Casper took it differently. Yes, she was old, but she was still a professor, and her field was fungi and microorganisms. Even if she helped now, perhaps she could not do anything practical. Just then, a man suddenly entered the room and said that the chief pharmacist had summoned Casper. Meanwhile, Yaku had reached the place where seriously infected people were kept. When Yaku opened the door, countless patients were writhing in pain inside. The divine temples, people were present near them. Seeing an innocent small boy enter the forbidden zone, one of them scolded him and tried to force him out. But just then, a man recognized him. He was in Archbishop Solomon's group earlier, so he stopped the others and let Yaku come inside. Then Yaku started his work without wasting time. He knew that those who were in a very severe stage, perhaps, they could not be saved. But still, it was his duty to try with his full capacity. First of all, Yaku wanted everyone to be distributed medicine as quickly as possible. He gave this task to the Divine Temple Brothers, while he himself got busy with the examination of patients. During this, he activated his medicine eye, Out of all patients, only 12 were infected with the actual plague. The rest were struggling with different illnesses. A faint light was still coming from most of their bodies. This meant they could still be saved. Yaku first called a man who was not seriously ill. He just had the flu. Yaku gave him medicine and told him to return home. But due to precautions, it was necessary for him to stay in home isolation. After this, he started the treatment of plague patients, and because of the workers of the purification deity, the efficiency of Yaku's divine healing magic increased even more. The patient's pain began to visibly reduce. But the truth was that handling so many people at once was not possible for him. Becoming a lone hero in fighting a pandemic was difficult. Everyone working together was necessary. Over there, the Divine Temple brothers had completed the medicine distribution. They came to give a report and asked for next instructions. Yaku immediately gave them a new mission. Before his arrival from Estark village, many smuggling consignments had left. There was a high chance that they were going towards the capital. Therefore, he ordered the brothers to find whatever goods could potentially be infected and destroy them immediately. As soon as all cases here were cleared, Yaku was going to reach there immediately too. On the other side, Ellen was also working with full dedication. The quarantine work was going on till late night. The workload was so much that Ellen had to remain extra cautious at every step because she did not have any special ability like Yaku. Thinking this, she felt a little pinch in her heart too. She wished she had learned more medical techniques from Yaku. Seeing Ellen a little down, her disciple immediately motivated her. Yes, Yaku's speed of checking disease was insane, but Ellen was no less either. She was far faster than Yaku in the inspection of goods. Being a pharmacist, helping people in this critical time was a dream opportunity for them. Over there, Professor Casper was finally meeting Chief Pharmacist Bruno. First of all, she thanked Bruno. Because of him, she kept getting funding for research. Professor Casper had thought this meeting meant she would have to close her research now, but what happened was exactly the opposite of this. Bruno had actually asked for her help in the mission to save the country. He gave an illustrated note and said that he needed her expertise in finding the bacteria needed to make the plague medicine. Casper put on her glasses and looked at the note and literally started sweating. She could not understand who could give such a detailed description. Upon looking closely, Casper was stunned. This microorganism was similar to the same specimen that she had created in her research years ago. She immediately took it to Bruno, and Bruno needed exactly this confirmation too. Casper activated her entire team at that very moment so that she could start the work of making new medicine against the Black Death. Meanwhile, Yaku remained engaged in the treatment of infected people all night. When finally he and the priests came out of the room, the pharmacists and leaders were waiting for them. Due to Yaku's hard work, many people in this area had been saved. Everyone was praising him from their hearts. Yaku had tried his best with a true heart. What would happen next now depended on local cooperation. Before leaving, he reminded the chief pharmacist that the ice wall created by him could stop the infection from spreading, and he strictly advised everyone not to go out unnecessarily at all. And apart from this, they would have to work together for the complete wipeout of rats and fleas as well. After giving instructions to everyone, Yaku jumped on his staff and flew straight away. Honestly, he himself had no idea that helping would take so much time. He also did not know whether the Divine Temple brothers had caught the smugglers or not. At that exact time, his gaze fell on a smoky cloud rising in the distance, and he immediately zoomed in that direction and reached there. The Divine Temple brothers had completed the mission given by Yaku with full perfection. They had burned the smuggling cart without delay and had stopped the smugglers by tying them up right there. Seeing the situation, Yaku landed calmly, and the brothers told him that the caught people were in high fever symptoms and had been abandoned on the way itself. Yaku asked them in a hurry what was in the smuggling group, but they became a little insecure and uncomfortable answering a small child like Yaku. Yaku sat slowly in front of them and gave a slight threat. He said that they had caught a deadly disease. If they tell the truth right now, he will treat them, otherwise forget it. Hearing this, they trembled, and now they did not have the courage to hide further. They confessed everything clearly. The cargo they were carrying had a crate of fruits and animals, and the box with animals contained white squirrels, which had come from Pened Island. Hearing this, Yaku was truly shocked. Pened was the same highly infected island where all residents had become victims of death. Yaku asked them for more details. Then he found out that 4 holy warriors were also with them for their protection during travel. The more Yaku thought about this, the more he began to feel that something seriously sinister was going on this time. Generally, holy warriors never go out for the protection of common people. So, was their mission to bring this disease to the capital? Thinking this, Yaku suddenly remembered that the queen had also been infected with the Black Death before, and the source of her infection was never clearly found. She had almost died at that time, but was saved because of Yaku. Was it for this reason that someone wanted to bring an even more dangerous version into the capital? The smugglers gave all the information to Yaku and begged him for medicine. The Divine Temple brothers had no intention of saving them. But for Yaku, it was not his mission. He would give them medicine. The royal capital would decide the punishment. From the royal capital's side, Bruno reached the palace before the queen with every detail related to the smuggling ship. The queen had received the report that their goods were coming towards the capital. Calculating the distance from Estark village, she estimated that they would perhaps arrive by tomorrow. The queen immediately gave orders to make disease inspections strict at gate number 6, which opened towards Estark. Next morning, when Lot was busy with mask distribution, Pierre found a suspicious sample at gate 6. As soon as he peered into the microscope, his hands trembled because what he saw under the lens was completely the Black Death without losing a single second. He called everyone to gate 6. At that same moment, a massive explosion occurred at gate 6. Whether the gate guards tried to stop the door or not, the Holy Knights chasing the smugglers attacked from every side. These Holy Knights were insanely powerful, and they had divine magic too. The city guards were not able to stop them at all. The quarantine zone was also dangerously close to the city gate, and the medicines given to Pierre by Yaku were stored right there. If that precious medicine got destroyed then, the situation would become even worse. Pierre ran towards the tent without caring about the danger so that he could save the medicine. Just then, he saw his companions and saw a Holy Knight pushing a cargo container from across the gate. He opened the cage and dozens of white squirrels jumped out. Then he used divine wind magic to blow these squirrels in all 4 directions. Immediately after this, Pierre's tent also collapsed. Seeing white squirrels running freely on the rooftops, Pierre got terribly scared. He still remembered Yaku's warning. The Black Death always spreads from rodents, and squirrels also come in the same category. Pierre immediately got up and ran towards the guard team. He ordered them to ring the alarm bell and immediately alerted restaurants and food shops across the entire capital to stop these squirrels from entering. The alarm bell echoed throughout the empire. The queen could only grit her teeth to hold back her anger. While Bruno had already guessed how dangerous the situation had become, an emergency meeting had to be called immediately in the palace. During the meeting, a guard came running to tell the queen that the Needle Kingdom's Holy Knights were attacking with a strength of about 5 soldiers, which honestly was no big deal for the queen. She immediately ordered everyone to deal with them. At that same time, Bruno reminded her that according to the report, these 5 Holy Knights had come from Needle, and he strongly suspected that they were the ones who brought the Black Death into the capital. The queen found this quite odd. After all, Needle was their ally. Attacking the capital with just 5 people made absolutely no sense. Bruno was fully confident that behind this, there was definitely a mastermind who understood the Black Death in great detail. Without experience and knowledge, making such a calculated plan was not possible. Bruno suspected a person. 3 years ago, the Needle Kingdom had accepted a common pharmacist into their country. Seeing the details, Bruno felt that person was similar to someone he once knew, a talent who was once called a genius pharmacist. But due to conducting brutal experiments on the human body, the Inquisition had sealed his divine magic, and he had been demoted to the rank of a common human. Bruno had heard that even when he was caught, he was researching a poison that could spread from human to human. Hearing this, the queen also understood the situation. If that same person was active in Needle, then their king's death must have also been because of him. Bruno clenched his fists. Camille may have been his companion, but now he was just a part of the past. Such a dangerous human could absolutely not be left outside Gate 6. He would have to be killed right there. 5 Holy Knights had clashed with the Royal Guards, although the number of Royal Guards was higher. But the Holy Knights' divine magic was so overpowering that the guards were unable to stop them. At that same time, Archbishop Solomon appeared there. He was very uncontrollable. Therefore, they gained control over him very quickly. Those who did evil against the will of humanity were not permitted to use divine magic now. In the name of the protected deity, Solomon took everyone into restraint and snatched their divine magic. The explosions echoing in the sky scared Lotte very much. She saw that the place where the explosion happened was very close to the otherworld medicine shop, Yaku's precious shop. She called Uncle Cedric for help, but Uncle Cedric refused immediately. He knew that Lotte's life was more important than the medicine shop. At that exact time, a bright light beam passed in front of Lotte. It was Yaku mounted on the medicine god's staff. He landed atop the alarm bell to see the breathtaking view of the capital. Yaku activated his medicine eye and looked around to see how far the epidemic had spread. Yaku saw countless light spots in front of him, which literally soaked him with sweat. At first, he thought the squirrels being transported were ordinary squirrels, but no, they were flying squirrels, which were very difficult to handle. Just then, Yaku saw Bruno running. That was why Yaku immediately descended and explained the situation to him. At Marseille port, he had already assigned this task to Master Ellen. Now, the most critical task was to stop the epidemic from spreading marching into the imperial capital. The 5 seriously injured holy warriors were taken under control by the archbishop, but when asked about their motive, nothing was found out. They did not even know that they had brought the Black Death into the imperial capital because they were only following orders. A crazy person had forced them to do this. A person who wanted to seize the life of the entire kingdom. In the blink of an eye, he could push thousands of people towards death. Truly, he was the incarnation of an evil spirit whom the holy warriors feared. Now Bruno appeared, and he gave a description of Camus' appearance. What they told was absolutely accurate. After confirming, the holy warriors took their last breath. Bruno ordered the guards for their proper cremation. The alarm of danger had now become silent. Thinking that everything is safe, Lade ran back towards the medicine shop. Yaku was also about to return there to do something else, when suddenly he saw a deep black shadow on the ceiling. Bruno immediately told the guard team to keep ringing the alarm. He knew that Camus would definitely come to the imperial capital to confirm the results of his research. Lot and Uncle Cedric had just returned from the medicine shop when the alarm rang again. Seeing the window open, Lade thought Yaku had come back, and she ran inside. But Uncle Cedric felt something was wrong. Lade ran towards the lab to find Yaku, but he was not there. Hearing the sound of the door opening, she was startled. Uncle Cedric came inside groaning and started scolding Lade. Then, suddenly, he collapsed. Camus had stabbed Uncle Cedric with a knife from behind and was now moving towards Lot. Yaku had now returned to the medicine shop. He immediately turned on his medicine eye and scanned. With the ability to see through walls, Yaku saw a black shadow in his lab. Yaku and Bruno immediately ran to check, saw that Uncle Cedric and Lade had already collapsed. While Camus was still observing Yaku's research, room peacefully. Bruno reminded Yaku to go treat both of them, and he himself would stay here to stop Camus. By this time, Camus had turned into an evil spirit, neither human nor ghost. Still, he was trying to impose his ideals on Bruno's mind. Of course, Bruno did not listen to a single word of his and attacked him, but he was very powerful. All of Bruno's attacks failed. Yaku ran to Lade and activated his medicine eye. Both were poisoned. Yaku used his full memory and knowledge to identify the poison type. Not just one, but they were under the effect of 2 types of poison. Luckily, Yaku's knowledge was so extensive that he could extract the toxic substances from their wounds. At this time, Bruno could not resist much. Camus kicked him and threw him into the wall. Then he took out his sword and went to Yako and complimented that Yaku's research room is very impressive. Yako became furious at this. Just for that, he would not save him. Yaku punched Camus directly on the face, which made him furious, and he shouted that Yako clearly has a power beyond his understanding. Yet why could he not understand his truth? Death by disease is humans' most beautiful death. Or if they control the disease, they could become even stronger. If Yaku did not understand, then one day he too would be lost among humans. Yaku did not care and punched straight on Camus' face and said that being a pharmacist, one should save people, not kill. Yaku's punch was so strong that the wall broke and went inside. Camus fell straight into the garden below the pharmacy. Yaku grabbed the divine staff tightly with rage and hit Camus with it. The emitting light spread throughout the entire imperial capital. Solomon immediately recognized that this was the plague elimination secret zone. In historical records, the medicine god's staff had many powers, among which the plague elimination secret zone was the most powerful. When the medicine god himself holds the staff to repel evil spirits, then this power activates. The imperial capital's epidemic was neutralized by the medicine god. The light faded, and this was the moment when Camus vanished into the air. Yaku gritted his teeth and cursed him, calling him a fool. Just then, Lot ran and hugged Yaku tightly, meaning everything was over. Although even after that, the attempt to stop the Black Death was continued by Yaku. Ellen completed the assigned mission excellent. She conducted a thorough inspection of all ships in Marseille. Yaku did continuous research against the epidemic and prepared medicines. Through his pharmacist union, this medicine was delivered to all citizens of the imperial capital. Not everyone could be saved, but at least the citizens were made worry-free. At Novarut University, Professor Casper was also very active in her research. All the medicines created by her. New microbes were very useful, from which Yaku could prepare even more types of antibiotics for future epidemics. In this way, the Black Death was no longer an incurable disease for Yaku. Due to everyone's joint efforts, 2 months later, the Empress could announce with full confidence that the Black Death was completely over. Now the time for the fair had come. Yaku's Otherworld Pharmacy also reopened again. It had been closed for a long time, so Ellen was a little worried whether customers would still remember it. The very first customer, Admiral Jean, came. He had also brought gifts for everyone from the fair. The pharmacy door opened, completely opposite to Ellen's worries. People were standing in a long queue to enter Yaku's pharmacy and shop. In just a short time, Yaku's pharmacy was filled with the crowd again. With this anime series ends here. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Goodbye.